Good morning, students. Today we are going to study a poem, Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray. And in our previous video, we have discussed about who was Thomas Gray, what were his famous works, and what is written in Elegy Written in Country Churchyard. So, in this video, we are going to read the poem text. On your screen you can see the text, and I will explain the stanzas one by one. Thomas Gray was born in 1716 and died in 1771. This poem is related to the genre of graveyard poetry, and it focuses on the ordinary village people who lie buried in the country churchyard and whose humble graves are contrasted with the tombs in the cathedral and the lives of those who have won fame and honor. This poem is rich in sound effects and in poetic imagery. And as I have told you earlier, that it is an elegy, a mourning song, a lamentation on the death of some favorable ones, some favorite ones. So the poem's opening lines are: the curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowing herd wind slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the word to darkness and to me. In line number 1, you can see the two types of bells. First is curfew and second is knell. Curfew: in medieval Europe, a bell was rung in the evening to mark the time for extinguishing all fires. Means curfew bell tells or marks about the sunset time or about the evening time or about the approaching night time. The knell, KNELL, that is written in line number 1. The knell is a type of bell that was rung when someone is died. So we can see in line number 1 that the poet is lamenting the parting day, and he is telling that the curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The dying parting day is marked by the curfew bell ring. The lowing herd went slowly over the lea, and the mowing herd are going slowly to the meadows, over the meadows, and they are also the mowing herd is also going to their home. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and the tired farmers are also going to their way to home, and leaves the word to darkness and to me. And in the last fourth line of the stanza, the poet is marking the time of sunset, and he is telling that all the farmers, all the animals are going to their home, and they are leaving this word to darkness and to me. Means I am alone in the graveyard, and I am seeing all the animals and farmers, they are going on their home. So in this stanza is a description of an evening in the countryside. The poet here used iambic pentameter, and in line number 3 the poet has used a transferred epithet, that is weary way. In the next stanza, now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and rosy tinkling lull the distant folds. So, in the next stanza, the poet is speaking about the environment, speaking about the atmosphere of that time. He is telling that now fades the glimmering landscape on the side. He is telling about the scene that due to sunset, all the landscape glimmering scenes are fading out of sight. Means in the line number 5, poet is telling us about that time of sunset, and he is telling about the the dim light of the sun there, and all the air a solemn stillness holds. And now, as the sunset is approaching, in the air a calmness is still holding, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight and drowsy tinkling lull the distant folds. So, in line number 3 and 4, the poet is telling that all the way there is a calmness, but only except the two sounds are making uh, feel us alive. That the two, what are the two sounds are? The two sounds are first the sound is of beetle wheels his droning flight, and the second sound is of drolly tinklings, means the bells worn by the sheep, which make slow sound as they settle down to sleep. And the sheep are uh, settling down to sleep, and so their bells that are worn in their necks, they are also making a sound that can make anyone feel sleepy. So in second stanza, the poet is mentioning a atmosphere in which there is everywhere a solemn stillness, a solemn stillness. Uh, there is everywhere a solemn stillness, a calmness pervades, but except there are two sounds. First is of beetle, and second is of the drowsy sheep that are moving their necks, and with the movement of their necks, a low sound of bells also tickling, and these two sounds are making the distant fields feel drowsy. Let's move to the third stanza. Save that from yonder ivy mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain, of such as wandering near the secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. In stanza 2, the poet has already told us about the atmosphere of that evening time, and in this stanza the poet is mentioning an owl, and he is saying that save that from yonder ivy mantled tower. Tower here, we can think that the tower here mentioned is a church tower, because the poet is sitting in the graveyard, and he is telling that the tower is the yonder tower. The on some distance there is a church tower, and that is ivy mantled, means that is coated by the ivy, uh, mm, coated by the ivy, and it feels that the tower has worn the cloak of ivy. The moping owl does to the moon complain. And in the next line, the poet is mentioning about an owl, and he is telling that it seems like the owl is complaining. Here, the poet has used a human nature of complaining to the owl. The moping owl does to the moon complain of such. Now in next two lines, the poet is himself giving the answer about the complaint of the owl. He is telling that of such as wandering near the secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. The owl is complaining about the speaker, the poet, that the poet had molested her ancient solitary reign. Bower here means a lady's private room, a secret room, and the poet thinks that the owl is complaining to the moon that the speaker, the poet himself, is molesting the ancient solitary reign of that owl. So, the poet wants to convey us a message that the owl that was living there in solitude, and her solitude is molested, he is disrupted by the presence of. In next stanza, beneath those rugged elms the yew trees shade where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell, forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Now, in this stanza, we will read the last line as the first, and afterwards we will read line number third, first and second. So we will read first of all the line. First of all, we will read line number 4. The rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Now the poet is talking about the buried persons in the churchyard, and he is saying that the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Hamlet means a tiny village, and the poet is using the word rude before the word forefather. Here he is indicating not about the nature of the forefathers of that village. They are not rude. Rude is here not means in the, meaning in the literary sense, but it means that rude here means the rural folks of that village. So the rural forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Sleep here means they are buried, each in his narrow cell, forever laid. Narrow cell here means the grave in which they are sleeping, in which they are laid, each in his narrow cell, forever laid. Forever laid here means they will never rise from their narrow cells. And now we will read line number 1 and 2. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap. Now, in line number 1 and 2, the poet is telling us the place where the graves of the forefathers of that hamlet, beneath those rugged elms, their graves are there beneath those elm trees and in the shade of the yew trees, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap. And as that place is a solitary place, so there are no one to come and go, and there are heaps of turf there on the graves of those forefathers. In next stanza, the breezy call of incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw built shade, the cock's shrill clarion, or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. Lowly bed means humble bed. Now the poet is mentioning three kinds of activities that can rise one person, that can wake up one person. The first is the breezy call of incense breathing morn here means morning. The breezy incense sticks are those sticks that we burn to make fragrant a room, to make fragrant a place. So the first activity is of the breezy incense that can wake anyone up from the bed. The second activity is of swallow twittering from the straw built shed. From the chirping of the birds can make anyone wake up from his or her bed. The third activity is of a cock that's whose shrill clarion, whose shrill voice can make anyone wake up. Or the last is or the echoing horn, or the echoing horn blown by the shepherd to gather his sheep. So these are the activities that can make anyone wake up from his bed. But these these all activities are in vain to wake up those forefathers aroused from their graves. So the poet is in last line, the poet is saying that no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. So neither the call of the incense, neither the breezy call of incense in the morning time, neither the twittering of the swallows, the chirping of the birds, nor the cock's shrill clarion, and nor the horn blown by shepherd, these activities can't wake up those forefathers who are buried in the grave, and they will never arouse from their lowly bed, they will remain forever. So, in these lines, the poet is speaking about the rural folks that are buried in the churchyard. And in our next video, we will discuss the description of an ordinary villager's family and working life. So, here in these lines, the poet is mentioning the atmosphere of that place and time in these lines, and in the last two stanzas, in stanza number 4 and 5, he is going to explain about the forefathers that were laid down there forever in the churchyard. So that's all for today. In our next video, we will process with the next stanzas. So thank you all.